Donnie and Dolly, the team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
All of our guests today on Donnie and Dolly, the team, including Jeff Paterson, standing by, brought to you by our title sponsor, Able Auctions, and ableauctions.ca. More on them later. Delaney's OK Tire and Langley inbox, Andrew and Sun Peaks. This is exactly what I was afraid of. We're, meaning the Canucks, 2 points out of a wild card.
Yep.
It's Groundhog Day, as management will predictably double down on this core and make moves to win now. I just can't get excited for this direction, as I feel we've watched this movie too many times before. And Andrew, like a lot of people, making the point that the Canucks are 2 points out of a playoff spot, but all the teams around them, pretty much all the teams around them, have games in hand.
That's true. Absolutely.
Jeff Paterson thanks for that, Rick. Jeff Paterson joining us now from Sekeres and Price and the Rink-wide podcast, Canucks in San Jose tonight. How are you, Jeff?
I'm good, guys. And just picking up on that conversation, Bruce Boudreau obviously just passed the 82-game mark as head coach of the Canucks the other night. And 97 points over his 82 games. Like, great. That probably would have squeezed them into the playoffs. And guess what the grand prize of the 8th spot in the second wildcard was? It was a matchup against the Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche last year. And so they probably wouldn't have hung around too long in the postseason. It's a couple of home dates for ownership, and I heard you guys talking about that. What I don't get is how short-sighted that is. Are 2 home playoff dates really that important to a family that has that much money? Like, isn't the better business plan to build a team that could get to the second or third round over 5 straight years and maybe has a chance to push it all the way to a Stanley Cup? You know what that is? That's probably 20 home dates over a 5 year. So, like, this idea of squeezing into the playoffs to say you made the playoffs, like, I just don't get it. Put me firmly in the camp that is ready to see this group take a step back so that it can then take a real step forward.
We mentioned so many teams around them having games in hand, but the fact is they're 2 points out of a playoff spot. They've won 7 of 10. Can you get excited about that if you're a Canucks fan, Jeff?
Again, it's so divided. I think there are so many that are, you watch the game the other night, you see them down 4-0 to a Montreal team. And honestly, like, people were walking away. You saw it in social spaces. That's it. I am done. I'm out. And then they probably come scurrying back once the comeback was on. Look, that was a fun hockey game. It was. Did I see that right? That is the first time in 49 years the Canucks have erased a 4-goal deficit to win. So, something that happens twice a century. You can't bank on that as a blueprint for long-term success here. So Rick is not wrong. I'll give Rick this. They score goals. But you know what, Rick?
Thank you.
There are better teams in the league than the Montreal Canadiens and the Arizona Coyotes.
Yeah, I know.
The last 2 teams that they beat. In fact, their last 3 wins as a hockey club all took overtime against San Jose, Arizona, Montreal. Again, that's not a way to build a winner, is needing and squeaking out overtime and needing a power play in overtime to beat the Arizona Coyotes, who had them down into the third period, and they needed to come back there. So, I didn't want to throw away the final 60 games of a season. We've been down that road too many times here over the last decade. So I like the fact that they make things interesting from a person that analyzes and observes and talks about this team. But if we're just being realistic about this group that is so porous defensively, taking on the San Jose Sharks tonight, both of those teams have given up 100 goals on the season now. Only Anaheim has given up more. So, this is who the Canucks are. They're a third of the way through their schedule now. They can't defend. They haven't defended. And now you're down to your second, your third string goaltenders. And there's certainly questions about, what that's going to look like over these next 6 weeks. So, it's a flawed group. It's been a flawed group from the outset, but I think a lot of people in the summer said, hey, they're going to score. They could be fun. The power play is going to be good. But in the end, you do have to be able to defend. It is about goal prevention. And proof of that, like Austin Matthews scored his 60 goals last year in Toronto. That was great. All the praise, all the hype around Austin Matthews. How did that work for the Leafs? Guess who the 3rd best defensive team in the National Hockey League is right here, right now? It's the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I think after all these years of trying to run and gun and outscore their opponents on a nightly basis, they've got some goaltending finally, but I think they've figured it out. Carolina is another team that, they struggle to score goals at times, but they're one of the best defensive teams in the National Hockey League. Oh, yeah, the Leafs and the Hurricanes, they're sitting 4th and 5th in the overall standings right now. The Vancouver Canucks, they are not. So, again, I do think the old adage about defense wins championships, certainly there is something to that.
I haven't talked to you about Brock Boeser and what happened. Our first chance on Saturday, you were there, a healthy scratch, gets to play the whole 9 yards, and now, the trade talk. Have you seen a difference in Brock since he was moved up in the lineup the last 2 games?
Yeah, I think I have, but it makes sense. He's getting to play with Elias Paterson, and I think you can make a strong argument that he probably deserved that opportunity. Elias Paterson props everybody up. Ask Andrei Kuzmenko what life is like when you play with Elias Paterson. Ilya Mikheyev is getting that Paterson bump as well. And so it's unfortunate that it took that crazy, strange chain of events on Saturday to get this little bump. And some of it, I think, was putting a scare into Brock Boeser. Again, it's so unfortunate that it had to happen on the Hockey Fights Cancer night. And the idea of scratching a $6 million guy, I'm generally not down with that. But at the same time, he had 3 goals. Prior to that, it was a great storyline on Saturday that he scored. He scored with that Brock Boeser shot that we haven't seen him score with all season long. But I'll tell you what, playing with Elias Paterson, it certainly comes with its perks. The downside, though, is you're going to play now against the other team's best defensemen, other team's matchup lines, and let's see if Brock Boeser can continue to contribute. When you're seeing that, when you were playing on the third line, you weren't seeing the defensive matchups, and so it's a little bit different. He wants to play with Paterson, certainly. I know those two have a friendship, and I do think that it's produced a little bit of a spike in Brock Boeser. At the same time, guys, they're out on the road tonight. Brock Boeser has 1 road goal this season. So you can't just be scoring at home. You can't just be pumping in goals when you're playing alongside Elias Paterson. This is the big leagues, and we know that Brock Boeser needs a centerman, a playmaker to put pucks in the right spots for him. So I've been encouraged with what I've seen the last couple of games, but again, getting this opportunity now, the stakes go up, and you've got Kuzmenko, who unfortunately, he bears the brunt of this because he takes the drop off that line with Paterson for the time being. But if Brock can't hold up his end of the bargain, he knows that his replacement is sitting there waiting literally in the wings, and they'll go back to Kuzmenko, who's already had some success with Elias Paterson. So pressure remains on, and certainly with all the trade talk, it's a tough spot for Brock Boeser, but this is the big leagues, and he's getting paid $6 million to produce. So I've been encouraged with these last couple of games, but it's got to be more than a 2-game run for Boeser. He needs to produce for this hockey club.
Yeah. Something different, and quickly, Jeff, if you don't mind, but what do you think the Canucks have? And there have been a couple of moments where you say to yourself, okay, I see what they were thinking. What do you think they have in Jack Studnicka?
Yeah, it's still too early in the run, but these last couple of games, the goal that was disallowed the other night with the net coming off, he made an incredible play, to see him sort of carve through. And again, it's the Arizona Coyotes defense, but it is the National Hockey League. It was a nice play, and I kind of think that goal probably should have stood, but it didn't. And then the other night, gets in on the forecheck, is able to hound the puck, turn it over, and scored what should have been the winner, right? At 5-4, complete the comeback. Obviously, it didn't quite turn out that way, but they did get the victory. I want to see more ultimately, Don, and I'm not trying to take the easy way out here. I haven't seen enough of him, but I do wonder, we keep talking about Sheldon Dries being a sort of quad A twinner. Could Jack Studnicka give you what Sheldon Dries is? I mean, he had those chops as a junior. That's why he was a second-round pick. Could he be the third-line center? They've primarily played him on the wing to this point. But if Dakota Joshua comes back tonight, somebody's got to come out of the lineup. The other night, it looked like it was going to be Brock Boeser. I don't think it'll be Boeser now, but I'm really curious to see, after a night like the other night where so many people contributed, who comes out if Dakota Joshua goes back into the lineup for the Canucks tonight.
Outstanding, Jeff. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks so much.
All right, and the California Golden Seals tonight, Donnie. They're wearing the reverse retros.
Well, right. That alone, reason to check it out. Thanks so much, Jeff. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thanks.